Deir al-Balah in central Gaza yesterday after the latest Israeli strike. Health officials here say more than 450 Palestinians have been killed in more than 3 months of ceasefire. Israel says Palestinian fighters have killed 3 Israeli soldiers in that time. Nearby, funerals are being held after a round of strikes the previous day. 10 people killed, including a Hamas commander and a senior figure in Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Israel said the strikes were in response to a Palestinian breach of the ceasefire, an attack on Israeli positions in southern Rafah. For all the fragility of the truce, President Trump moving ahead with its second phase, fleshing out his supervisory board of peace.
We hope the peace board created by Trump will work very seriously on the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip and opening all border crossings, God willing.
It depends on the Israelis, who are the occupying enemy, for it to succeed or fail. If they are keen to make it succeed, they will make it succeed. And if they are not, it will fail.
The White House is now confirming that Sir Tony Blair will be a leading figure on the board, overseeing Gaza's governance. It's uncontested that he has experience in the region. But his earlier incarnation as Middle East peace envoy was always haunted by the spectre of his role while Prime Minister in the 2003 Iraq War.
Whenever you come anywhere or do anything in this part of the world, you will get people who protest.
Donald Trump is now inviting other world leaders to join him on the board of peace. Below that level, more details on its founding executive board. Apart from Britain's former Prime Minister, all of its members are US citizens. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Presidential Envoy Steve Witkoff, Presidential son-in-law Jared Kushner, US Deputy National Security Advisor Robert Gabriel, billionaire investor Mark Rowan, and the World Bank President Ajay Banga. 4 of those figures also feature in the Gaza Executive Board, along with senior diplomats from Qatar and Turkey and Egypt's intelligence chief. The former UN Middle East envoy Nikolai Mladenov will be the board's Gaza representative. In the last hour, Israel's Prime Minister objecting to the makeup of the Gaza Executive Board, saying it had been done without coordination and contradicted Israeli policy. The Palestinian technocratic team charged with running Gaza's rehabilitation have been meeting in Cairo this week. Led by Gaza-born Ali Shaath, a civil engineer who wants to use the tens of millions of tons of rubble to expand Gaza's territory into the sea. Among the primary questions, though, how to achieve the disarmament of Hamas, and indeed how to define it. Just heavy weaponry or rifles too? Donald Trump reissuing his threat this week that it could be done the easy way or the hard way. Hamas insisting its hand won't be forced.
These political approaches can be addressed with Palestinian national consensus, independent of the Israeli logic regarding disarmament.
Plenty else still to be resolved. The return of the body of the last Israeli hostage, Ran Gvili. Israel's reported encroachment beyond the yellow line delineated in the deal, along with the makeup and deployment of the planned international stabilization force. And still, the humanitarian suffering in Gaza goes on. The UK among several nations to demand at the end of December a removal of aid restrictions. As Palestinians in Gaza suffer through another winter, no question they need this deal to work and for life in Gaza to begin at last to improve.
Well, earlier I spoke to Lord Ricketts, who served as Britain's first national security advisor and was involved in policy on the UK's intervention in the Balkans, Iraq and Afghanistan. I began by asking him about the people appointed to the board.
And at the top, it's very largely American. Really, Tony Blair's the only non-American at the top structure. It also has a yawning gap, because although it's a good sign that the Americans are committed to driving forward, there is nothing about this international security force which has to be on the ground in Gaza before all these great men can actually turn their plans into something which helps the suffering people of Gaza and move things forward. So I would say it's a step forward. It's very top-heavy and complicated, but there's a lot more work to do.
And you mentioned Sir Tony Blair there as the notable exception to a big group of Americans. He says he's honoured to be appointed to this board. Many in the region will feel less happy about this, won't they? He is a divisive figure for many.
He is, and he's not going to be on the topmost board of all, which hasn't yet been revealed to us. And the case for having him on is very strong, because this is a guy who has enormous experience of dealing with post-conflict stabilization in Iraq, have got bringing communities together in Northern Ireland.
I mean, notable in the absence, though, from this particular board are any Palestinians or even representatives of senior members of Arab countries. And that's a problem, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's part of this elaborate, complicated structure, because right at the bottom of the structure is what they call a Palestinian technocratic committee, which is supposed to actually run Gaza. That has Palestinians on it. The layer above, an executive committee, has a number of Arab representatives from the UAE, also there's a Turkish representative. But then at the topmost, as you say, no representatives from the region. The only representative from Europe is Tony Blair, and all the rest are American. So this is a self-selected, American-dominated setup.
It's good if it keeps Trump on board, but it is bad, presumably, if it elicits antipathy from the neighbours of Israel and Gaza.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the problem. And this sort of Supreme Board of Peace, I guess, will have a number of figures from the region. I think President Erdogan is Turkey is supposed to be on it, as well as Keir Starmer from the UK and others. So there'll be perhaps a bit of buy-in when we get this topmost level. But the key thing is, can it make a difference on the ground? And there I come back to the issue of security. Because 3 months have elapsed since the ceasefire, Hamas has tightened its grip in the areas that it still occupies. It's going to be an enormous job to demilitarize, to disarm Hamas, to get Israel to withdraw. For all that, international forces are going to be needed. And right now, nobody knows where they're going to come from.
And just briefly, without that security, how difficult will it be to start to reconstruct Gaza, to start to rebuild?
Well, I think it would be impossible. I mean, the only area you could do it in is the area already controlled by the Israelis. Hamas won't allow Western construction companies and private security agencies to operate there. So there won't be any serious reconstruction, building shelter for the poor, suffering people of Gaza in the winter weather. I think humanitarian aid is getting in. That's good, although more of it is needed. But the heavy-duty reconstruction has to have security, as absolute prerequisite.
There are reports that the wider board is being considerably widened. That is fueling reports that actually Donald Trump's intention here is not just to have a board of peace for Gaza, but for wider world conflicts, a sort of Donald Trump United Nations. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Well, it's a very Trumpian approach to the problem. As you say, really reinventing the UN Security Council with a Trump-chaired, Trump-dominated board. There's absolutely no way that is going to work. In Gaza, this operation has a UN authorization in a resolution, but for any other conflict, it has no legitimacy at all, nor is it the right collection of people to pursue peace, for example, in Venezuela or in Ukraine. So, it's a ridiculously extravagant idea. It has no hope of working.
Lord Ricketts, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.